All right, so Carrie, we got to do a couple poses for Sid for the thumbnail.
All right.
Let's
Tell me
do
when
like,
you're
let's do one where we're both smiling, and then we just hold it for 3 seconds, and then we'll do another pose. Okay.
okay.
All right, ready?
Yep.
One, two, three. Welcome to the Project Violet podcast, where we're empowering driven professionals to grow their impact, accelerate their careers, and lead with confidence. My name is Daniel Lay.
And I'm Carrie Maselli.
All right, Carrie. Well, that's the new intro we're going with.
Thanks to nobody for
They said,
voting.
yeah, 0 votes, but we both voted and we both voted for option three. So there we go. Yeah, do appreciate our dozens of listeners.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks to
Eh.
you.
So how's it going? How are things going
Good.
today?
I'm heading on vacation starting on Sunday, so I'm happy.
There you go. Yeah, we're doing a little staycation here in Houston, so I'm very excited about that.
Isn't there something just so wonderful about somebody else cooking for you and doing the dishes?
Yeah.
That's what
It's
I'm most excited. I mean, I'm excited to lay in the sun, but I really just want to eat something that someone else prepared
mhm.
and not clean up.
No, I love that. And also when we're in consulting or the services business, like we're serving our clients all week, serving our people and it's just nice to be served every
Oh my
once in a
gosh.
while. So going to a restaurant, just have someone just kind of, give you the nice hospitality. I'm looking forward to it.
I appreciate that. You're right. We do like all week long, we think about other people and what they
Hmm.
need, even at work. Yeah.
Yep. And it's just nice going somewhere where, people are servicing you and thinking about what you need and offering things to you. Is nice. I
Well, now don't you wish though that those people, hopefully they have somebody who's like serving them
hope so. Yeah. I think
because
everyone
they
needs
probably get real
that.
tired of it too.
Oh yeah. I hope we're not those customers, but
I
yeah,
hope not. I
I'm
don't think we
sure
are.
they
I
need a
don't
break
know.
from us too.
Oh gosh.
All right. So in today's episode, we're going to be taking another question from our advisor network. This one's going to
Nice.
be more about leadership. So I think we're going to have different takes, but the question, and maybe I'll start with it and then I'll just read the question, then we can jump right in. So the question is for someone stepping into a leadership role for the first time, what's the most important thing they should focus on? Okay, I'll
Okay.
let
And
you
for
go
sure, we're going to
first.
have different takes, but I think that's the beauty of this, right?
Hmm.
So I think the most important thing a new leader should focus on is themselves. Now,
Okay.
I know that it sounds counterintuitive because leadership is truly about other people, right? And getting them all aligned and, achieving whatever success is in, for that team or for that person. But the truth is, and I believe this wholeheartedly, that you can't lead other people well if you don't understand yourself. And I don't mean, Daniel, like selfishness, right? It's kind of like that idea of, there's humility obviously that is involved in leadership, but we have to get to know ourselves. So I think when you understand your own core values, when you know what motivates you, when you know how you handle pressure, how you communicate, and how your behavior impacts the people around you, right? Like you can be much more intentional about how you're working with other people, how you're showing up. And I think that when you don't do that work to understand yourself, and it is a work in progress, by the way, that isn't just like a one and done, like, oh, I know myself and I'm done. Like this work is done. It's evolving and it's, throughout your career. But I think if you don't do the work of understanding yourself, especially the piece about how your communication and behavior impacts other people and how they receive it, it's really easy then, Daniel, to lead in a way that I think is reactive. It's inconsistent. People don't know which version of you they're going to get necessarily. And that's really one of the worst things, a manager can do is be inconsistent. Or you're behaving in a way that's very misaligned from what you actually believe. And that's exhausting and not sustainable over time. Maybe you're emulating somebody else or the culture of your peer, leaders, and it's not who you are, right? Authenticity is so key. So I think, but I think when you start with this really strong foundation of self-awareness, everything else, your decisions, your relationships, your influence become much more grounded and authentic, like I said, which I think is much more successful long term.
Yeah, when you're bringing that up, I keep thinking about you. If you can't lead yourself, it's going to be difficult to lead others. And
Yeah.
to start, you got to figure out who you are. Do you have any thoughts or tactical advice on how to learn more about who you are? I know you talk about the DISC assessment a lot. And I did the Myers-Briggs one. Like I'm an INTJ. That actually was very insightful when I took it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think any assessment, I feel like the Myers Briggs thing we could talk about in another podcast because, that's been
Dis-
challenged.
oh, disproven.
Uh-huh. Well, I just think, you know what it is? I don't want to negate the fact that you learned about yourself because I think that is
Mm.
critical. Like I'm saying, to being able to lead and even just be well in the world is to know who you are. The Myers Briggs, I think there's a bit about the science behind it isn't
Oh,
really science, I think is the
it's
key.
fake
However,
science.
that's for another day. I think, yes, disc is one way. Disc for me, and I think so many others, we do disc a lot in the work that we do. And I think I know people have an experience with it that is really rewarding because they start to uncover and unlock like, oh, this is how I am. And it's really okay to be any of those communication styles. In fact, we're all a little bit of each. And to understand how someone might receive your style versus, and then also understand what they need from you and what their style is so life changing. I know that sounds so dramatic, but it's the truth. I think knowing and doing the work to figure out what your core values are and how that shows up and what that looks like. In fact, when we talk about preparing to lead in our leadership course, this idea that we can name our core values and they could change over time, but start somewhere by naming what's important to you and then like really doing the work to figure out what that looks like and in behavior, like what is it in action, like the core principle. It's one thing to feel and believe something, but then how does that show up in what you do, right? if
Yeah.
i if my core value is empathy, which one of them happens to be, then I am listening to other people in a way that believes their lived experience, even if it differs from mine,
Yeah.
right? Like, so that's an example of what people can do to really get there.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was also thinking when you were talking about that, it can give you insight into your triggers as well. So like what
Absolutely.
brings you, frustrates you, or gets you going. And then if you know that about yourself, you can also catch yourself when you feel like those emotions starting to come, like, oh, this
Mm-hmm.
is triggering me because, it's going against one of my core values. Now I'm equipped to identify that feeling and then deal with it. Especially in a leadership situation, everyone's different. Someone might trigger you in a different way, and it's good to know what those triggers are, and then you can manage it and communicate that as well.
Well, and I don't know if you know this, a little secret is that when we are triggered, it's never about the external. A trigger is an event, it's an experience, it's a person, who causes some sort of extreme reaction in us. And it's never actually about that external force. It's about what's happening inside of you and what you need to like unpack and uncover that leads to that, right? Like this idea that I'm being triggered by this behavior in this other person or this thing that happened. It's because there's something in me that's like kind of shaped
Hmm.
how I show up in my perspective.
Yeah,
It's
that's great.
really
It gives you
some
agency
it's some
too.
tough work.
Yeah, it gives you the power to know that it's within you and that you can deal with it. So
Yes,
even whatever happens in outside of the world is outside of your control, but you can control how you feel and react
that's
and
right.
perceive, I guess, yeah, the world.
You
Very
can't you
stoic.
can't control Sharon. Just as an example, and I just pulled that name out of nowhere, but
Hmm.
you can't control these other people, but you can certainly control how you show up and react to them, right?
Yeah. I think the universal term is Karen these days.
Karen. I know. I think Sharon. I feel like poor Karen, right? Some Karens I have a friend named Karen. She's lovely.
It's
And the
unfortunate
opposite
for
of,
Karens of the
it
world.
is like, she's the opposite of a Karen as we've come to know it, right? Or to know Karen. So I just like to say Sharon instead. Or Sharon now. Sorry, Sharon.
Sharon, Karen, it's very similar.
I mean,
Very cool. All
what's your
right.
answer?
All right. My take is a little different, of course. I go very tactical, and I was thinking about the people that are going through the consultant development program or the boot camp this past week. And a lot of them are very ambitious, great senior consultants that are looking to make manager. And I was thinking about my time. So not necessarily leadership, but my answer is more on, okay, what are the things that you need to focus on when you move to a management role for the first time? And I think that's one of the biggest transitions in someone's career, especially in the early stages, going from kind of the individual contributor, being great at that, and then being
Mhm.
promoted to manager. And then that's a whole new game. That's a whole new, set of skills that you need to develop. So in the context of that, if you become manager for the first time, what are the things that you need to focus on? And I said, number one is you need to become a better communicator. Even if you think you're a great communicator,
Yep.
you are not in the sense of if this is your first management role because you need to develop new communication skills.
Well,
And I
and do you
think
know who decides if you're a good communicator or not?
it's your people.
Yeah, not you,
Not
right?
you.
Yeah,
Exactly.
right.
So you might be good in the past of communicating what you've done and the work that you've done and maybe managing up in a certain way. But when you're trying to communicate and you're trying for the first time in your career, you have to lean on other people to get the work done. You are not the one actually doing the work yourself. And the only way to get the work done is to communicate. And really, it's figuring out how do you set clear guidance, how do you set expectations, and then how do you hold people accountable. And those are all the three kind of big pillars in communication, especially from a
Hmm.
management perspective.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I think that's number one, but I have a bonus.
Let's hear it.
So, so the next one is having a good framework or a good approach or a system to trust and verify. So this is
Mm,
kind of a take on the trust but verify. And I was looking that up, and I think it's a Russian phrase that
interesting.
Ronald Reagan made famous during when he was kind of the disarmament for like nuclear weapons, and when he was always talking about the Soviet Union, it was always trust but verify.
Sure.
So I thought there was a negative tone to the but. So I think trust and verify is a great way
Yeah.
to have a mental framework for it.
Or yet. Yet is a
Yeah.
really nice neutral replacement for but.
Yeah. So it's just you trust your people and verify. Just make it part
Hmm.
of your process and make it understood that hey, this is not about you or me not trusting you. It's just it's part of my process. So number one, talking about the two different sides of that coin. So trust first is a good way to think about it is what is the opposite of trust, and the opposite of trust is in my mind micromanagement in this context,
In
and
this context, for sure.
yeah.
Absolutely.
You
Yeah.
do not want to be a micromanager as the
No,
first time you move into a management or a leadership role. Like everyone hates that, and it shows that you don't trust the people to do the work, and no one wants to work for a micromanager. So,
nobody.
number one,
Right.
trust people to do the work, give them the space to do the work, even if it's not exactly the way you would do it. You have to kind of, you know, pick and choose your battles. And if it's good enough to get the job done, I think a lot of times you have to think about trust the people to get it done in their way and not necessarily your way.
That's right. There's more than one way to skin a cat.
Exactly.
I don't know
And
why
then
that's the phrase, but
actually, that'd be good to look up. Uh, I'm sure there's an interesting
stay
story behind
tuned for
that.
next time.
Yeah. And then the second part, though, is verify. So make sure you have a good cadence within your workflow to be able to check the work that people are doing and really build good feedback loops in your management style. So trust them to do the work and
Hmm.
have a good system to just check in every once in a while to make sure that everyone's aligned, everyone's kind of marching to the beat of the same drum, and that you have the ability to give feedback but still give trust to the people that are doing the work.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Sure. And what comes to mind for me is this idea of what got you there won't get you there.
Hmm.
Right. When you're a super talented senior consultant in your example, and then you're promoted to lead a team, all of that goes out the window, truly. I mean, yes, your skills are something that you can stand on to some degree, but it just doesn't get you to that next level, which is being a great leader. You have to be able to work through other people. Uh, it's really isn't it a universal challenge? I don't know a new
Yeah.
leader who doesn't struggle with that.
No, it's really hard to make that transition. You're almost getting promoted to a new level of incompetence that you need to
Yes.
build new skill sets for.
What a cool way to say that because it's true. And like, if we know that going in, which I didn't know that,
Yeah.
right? I was ready, like, like, all right, here we go, right? Like, I'm in charge.
Yeah, and you're
And
trying to use the same toolkit that you used as an individual contributor, and it's not the same toolkit. And you start realizing very quickly, oh, I need to start building new skills, and I actually don't know what I'm doing.
mhm,
And it's time to
mhm.
figure that out. Yeah.
When I think about, I don't know, you can tell me if this even relates. When I think about this trust and verify piece, which again, I endorse fully, I think about this idea that leaders can get into quite a pickle if they hold other people to a standard that they themselves don't meet or
Oh yeah.
can't meet.
Hmm.
Do you think that's kind of the same thing? I mean, they're two different things, but like this idea that if you don't expect yourself, if you don't behave in this way, I'm thinking of the verify part, or maybe even the trust part. I don't know. I want to hear what you think about that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people can figure out very quickly if their manager doesn't know how to do the job, and so they are holding people to a standard that they've never set accomplished themselves, or they
Mm-hmm.
don't even know how to do the job. And I think a lot of times that's the worst type of manager. And you see this in big companies like Google. They've actually looked at like who are the best managers, and it's usually someone who's like very skilled, doesn't want to be a manager, but they figure out, you know what, someone has to be in that manager role. It might as well be me. And it's
Uh-huh.
someone that a lot of the engineers respect because they've done the work and they've proven themselves and they've seen how good of a coder they are, for example. A lot of the times, I think some managers get promoted and they actually haven't done the work to be really good, become an expert at whatever they're managing. And I think that causes a lot of conflict because when their people are looking to them for guidance and they realize that this person doesn't even know what they're talking about, they don't know what I'm doing, they don't understand the skill sets that that I need to get the job done. They lose respect for their managers. They start going against what their manager says because they don't believe they know exactly what they're doing. And that can be a big problem. So I guess it's not necessarily, yeah, I think it's kind of a conundrum. It's not necessarily that they haven't held that standard before, but maybe they're just not. They don't have the skill sets or the skills to understand what their people should be doing and
Mm-hmm.
and how to lead them.
What do you think about this idea though that and I fully agree with this notion that we have to have some sort of expertise to lead a team of people who are trying to achieve something, right? Whatever that might be, whether it's client delivery or building a circuit board, whatever it might be. Though it really is okay. And maybe there's a cultural shift that's needed to where like the leader doesn't have to be an expert in all the things. To your point earlier, the leader needs to be able to communicate at a level that everyone in the room, no matter if there's 10 people or 50 people, understands, right? And they understand what they're going to go and do. They need to be able to set those expectations and then hold people accountable to them. And so if I'm not an expert in this thing that this person on my team is, I mean, I employ people, Daniel, who are highly skilled at things that I don't have the first clue about how to do. And I think that's okay, right? Like when you have a team of people, I mean, I think in your instance with the
But
consultants.
yeah, I'm talking about like in, I guess, managers where you're going leadership. So I think
Oh, true. I
yeah,
do like that
yeah,
you're
yeah,
distinguishing between
yeah.
those.
There is a difference. Like in
Yeah.
consulting, what they usually do is they do a picture of an hourglass. So when
Uh-huh.
you start, you're a junior consultant, and then you specialize and you become an expert at something, and then you make manager. So that's like you start very broad, and then you go very specialized, and then
Uh-huh.
you're the manager of that specialization. So you can actually manage people and actually
I
understand
gotcha.
what needs to get done. But then once you start moving into leadership and you start making partner, then you start broadening back out again. So it's you're not specialized anymore. You're a generalist, but
Yeah, yeah.
you have a strategic mindset. You can cast a vision. You're a great communicator. Then you start broadening out again. So I guess in the context of what I was saying, you're right. When you're a leader, you clearly don't have the detailed expertise to get certain things done, but you have to be able to communicate what the vision is and the goal and the outcomes that you want,
Right.
and then get those people to follow you into that
Mm-hmm.
vision. But when you're a manager, like you definitely need to have, I think, at least the skill set to understand what are the details that need to get done,
Mm-hmm.
and you should be able to have some kind of specialization to understand when things are going the wrong direction. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's my caveat to that one comment. Yeah.
I appreciate that. It is like a leveled thing. And I always think
Right.
more broadly, in terms of leadership, but I think that's where you bring it down a little bit better,
Mhm.
to that first year manager type of, yeah,
Yeah.
specialist, if you
Yeah,
will.
just one quick story because does kind of remind me of this, and a lot of consultants have experienced this in a certain way where uh, someone told me this story where their manager was telling them to go, and this is more kind of conceptual, but he said go and draw me a picture of an animal, and that was the direction, like very broad. So
Huh.
the guy goes back, he's like, I have no idea what he's asking me to do, so I'm going to draw a picture of an elephant. So he goes back and he shows him, hey, I drew a picture of an elephant. He goes, why'd you draw me a picture of an elephant? Like that was such a stupid thing to do. You need to draw me like a sea animal. And then he goes, okay, that's still a very broad direction. I'm going to go back, and then he draws, a picture of a dolphin. Goes back to the manager and he's like, here's a picture of a dolphin. It's a sea animal. And he goes, no, that's not, I didn't want something like that. I wanted something that, is a bottom feeder in the bottom of the ocean. Go back and draw me the picture again.
Such a waste of time.
And the story just keeps going and going,
Yeah.
right? And then eventually the guy comes back and he's like, oh, this guy doesn't even know what he wants. He just knows what he doesn't want. And this is just like a reoccurring like
Mm-hmm.
problem that I'm going to have with him. So I think that story just shows poor communication, B, a
Yes.
manager that doesn't really understand what needs to be done. So is just coming up with things on the spot, and the way that in the story, the way it's communicated makes the person feel like crap every time that he
Absolutely.
doesn't figure out what he needs to do. So
Nobody
anyway, that
wants their
story came
time
up.
wasted either. That's what I think about
Yeah.
when I think about, I mean, all those things are true, right? This manager is deeply flawed, in this story. However, like the person who's drawing these animals is their time is completely wasted. And if you're highly productive, high potential, whatever. I mean, most people, even if you're not highly productive, you don't want your time wasted.
Yeah. Yeah. Whenever I hear that story, it's just, you'd want to take the manager aside and be like, hey, maybe be a little more specific in your communications or think about how you're communicating and the message isn't being received by your consultant for some reason. Like how can you change how you're giving direction and guidance and expectations to get the outcomes that you want?
I feel like we
So
need to do this exercise, like where we talked about like the trust and verify piece. Like, so if the goal is, maybe this would help people, right? If, and I'm doing this on the spot, so this could really crash and burn. We'll see. Hang on. But if the goal is, if you're the manager, because this idea, like, so we think about on one hand this micromanagement, right? And we're like, don't do it. That's universally the recommendation, right, for any manager is don't micromanage anybody because it's not good for anyone, right? It doesn't
mhm.
actually achieve long-term results, or general engagement, from your people. So if the goal is not to micromanage, but I also need to end up whatever this future outcome is, right? As the leader, I need the team all working in the same direction to get to here, or the one person who's on the receiving end of this direction to draw the animal, right? So it's like, okay, how do we give people some autonomy, like trust them with the autonomy to get to that end drawing? However, in a way that like success is more probable, right? And I get what I need as the manager, right? Like, is that the
Mhm.
idea? So it's like, what could that really bad manager say to this person to say, okay, I want you to draw to your point, I think it's going back to like that last bit about, okay, we need a drawing of a bottom feeding marine
Yep.
life or like,
Yeah. Yeah.
right. I mean,
That's part
because
of this species.
that could be some lots of different things, but if that achieves the result, like the person has the flexibility within there to
Yeah.
choose, right? I don't know, did
Yeah.
I do it? I don't know.
Well, so taking that example, and I know when I became a manager, this is something that I definitely needed to work on. But I always found that give the context first. So say like, hey, I'm asking you to do this, and here's why. So
Uh-huh.
they at least understand from a business conceptual standpoint, like what is the outcome that we're marching towards, and why am
Mm-hmm.
I asking you to do this? So there's purpose behind the activity. Two is usually it's like to build a slide or something. So I would usually talk with them and whiteboard just conceptually like a very generalized high level wireframe of what I was thinking and
Mm-hmm.
maybe give them some work samples of previous projects or previous work that we've done and say like, hey, it's kind of in this direction. So this is kind of the style, the kind of like information that we need on the slide that I need
Mm-hmm.
you to go find. And then here's the quick whiteboard of like where we think conceptually this could look like. And I think that in itself, giving the context, giving some previous historical work that they can
Mm-hmm.
reference, and then give some like broad wireframes of what you think. So some scaffolding around the building of so that they can actually build the building up is
Mm-hmm.
enough for them to do good work. And that's kind of the process that I would go for, especially if it was specifically to like draw a picture of something.
Mm-hmm.
That's the direction I would usually go.
And the building can be decorated however they want, right?
Yeah,
Like
they can
they
do
have
it.
that autonomy in there.
Exactly. Yeah. So they
Yeah.
generally understand the direction we're trying to go, what it could look like, and why we're doing it. And that's usually enough information to do a really, really good job.
Mm-hmm. You ever hear Daniel Pink talk about how people need three things at work? Like through his research, he's found that people desire mastery, autonomy, and purpose in their
Yeah.
work. Have you ever heard of
Makes
that?
sense.
That's
Yeah.
exactly what you just described, right? The
Very cool.
why behind it, what's the purpose? And the purpose actually is a much deeper
Hmm.
personal meaning, behind our work. But even in this example, like purpose is this is the why, we're trying to do this, the autonomy to do it, and that trust in you to that someone values you enough and your ideas that you can, take some liberty or to do things in your own way as long as it's,
Hmm.
aligned with the greater goal. And then that mastery, people want to be good at things.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Purpose,
Mm-hmm.
autonomy, and mastery. That's what we all want.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I
Yeah,
think
that's
that's a
Daniel Pink.
good place
Yeah.
to end the podcast. I like
There you
that.
go.
That
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like that's a good place to land and to think about as we go into our jobs. Do we have purpose? Do we have autonomy to do our work? And then are we working towards mastery of something? I think that's great.
Yeah, I love it.
All right. Well, thank you, Carrie. This is another great conversation, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Good.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.